Part 1. You will hear a man asking for course details at a community center offering evening classes. First, you have some time to look at questions 1 to 6. Now listen and answer questions 1 to 6.
Good morning, Westbrook Community Center. Anna speaking. How can I help you today?
Hello, I'm calling because I heard you run evening classes and I'd like some information.
Certainly. We have a wide range, art, fitness, computing, and even language lessons. Which are you interested in?
I was actually thinking of taking a language course, maybe Spanish. I travel to Spain quite often for work, so I think it would be useful.
That's a popular choice. The Spanish class is for beginners, though we also have French if you're curious.
I'll stick with Spanish for now. When are the classes held?
They run every Tuesday, 7 to 9 p.m. That schedule allows learners to practice regularly.
Okay, and how long does the course last?
It's a 12-week program. By the end, students usually reach a conversational level.
Great. Now, about the cost, what are the fees?
For the full course, the fee is £180. That includes course materials and access to our online practice platform.
That seems reasonable. Do I need to buy any textbooks separately?
Not at all. The tutor provides digital resources. The only thing you'll need is a notebook for taking notes.
Before you hear the rest of the conversation, you have some time to look at questions 7 to 10. Now listen and answer questions 7 to 10.
That's convenient. I should mention I have a hearing aid. Will that be a problem in class?
Not at all. The classroom is fitted with a loop system that connects to hearing devices. You'll also be seated closer to the tutor.
That's reassuring. What about parking? I usually drive here.
Yes, we have a car park. However, during evenings it tends to get full quickly, so I recommend arriving at least 15 minutes early to secure a space.
Understood. Can I register online or do I need to come in person?
You can do either. Many people prefer registering online through our website, but if you'd rather, you can come to the reception and fill out a form.
I think I'll do it online. Last question, when does the next course actually start?
The new term begins on the 12th of March. If you register this week, you'll be all set to join from the very first session. Otherwise, late registration is possible, but you might miss the opening class.
Perfect. Thank you for all the information.
You're most welcome, Mr. Lewis. We look forward to seeing you in class.
That is the end of Part 1. You now have half a minute to check your answers to Part 1. Part 2. You will hear a guide talking about a historic building that has been transformed into a public library. First, you have some time to look at questions 11 to 15. Now listen and answer questions 11 to 15.
Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to our Community Heritage Walk. Today, I'll share with you the story of Ashton Manor, a building that has gone through a remarkable change. Once it was a grand house built in the 17th century, and now it has a completely different life as the town's main public library. To start with, Ashton Manor was built by Sir Robert Linton, a rich trader. He wanted a fine home for his family, and the estate included large gardens and even a small orchard where fruit trees grew. As time went on, though, the place was not looked after properly. By the middle of the 20th century, the house was falling apart, with broken windows and walls that were close to collapsing. Now, some people believe it was the town council who first decided to save the building, but actually, it was a group of local residents who came together with the idea. They argued that pulling it down would mean losing an important part of local history. Their campaign drew support from heritage groups, and only later did the council agree to provide some financial help. As for the question of what the manor should become, there were different suggestions. Some residents argued for a museum. Others thought a small hotel would bring money to the town. But the Education Trust pushed for a library, saying that better access to books and learning was what the community needed most. Their case was especially strong because they secured a big donation from a retired school teacher who had studied in Ashton long ago. Changing a ruined manor into a library was not an easy job. The wooden beams in the roof had weakened badly. Some planners wanted to replace them with steel, which would have been quicker and cheaper, but preservation experts insisted on using oak to keep the building close to its original style. The work took longer and cost more, but it gave the house back much of its old character. The gardens created another problem. They had once been for private relaxation, with flower beds and fountains. In the redesign, however, the space was open to everyone. Now there's a small park with benches, a children's reading corner, and even a little outdoor stage where weekend storytelling events are held.
Before you hear the rest of the conversation, you have some time to look at questions 16 to 20. Now listen and answer questions 16 to 20.
At present, the library is run through a mix of support. It is officially under council management, but most of the day-to-day activities, such as author visits, workshops to improve reading, and evening computer classes, are arranged by volunteers. Funding doesn't just come from local taxes either. A number of nearby businesses promise to give money every year, which helps keep the library running. One reason the library is special is that it combines old and new. The reading rooms still have the original fireplaces, but now there is Wi-Fi and charging points for laptops. On the upper floor, what used to be a grand ballroom has been changed into a digital archive, giving students access to historic newspapers. Another unusual part of the library is the Oral History Project. Senior citizens visit to capture their memories, which are then archived as audio files. Many visitors say these voices make the past feel much more alive than simply reading about it in books. Before I finish, just a quick note on opening hours. The library opens daily except Mondays. On weekdays, it runs from 9 in the morning until 1, then again from 2 until 7. Saturdays close a bit earlier at 5, and Sundays are open only in the afternoon. Entry is free, of course. So, when you next see Ashton Manor, remember it's not just an old house from centuries ago. It's a lively place where people meet, learn, and connect with the history of the town. And if you do visit, don't forget to check the notice board near the main entrance. It lists all upcoming events for the month. Many visitors say they discover something new every time they return, whether it's a workshop, a performance, or simply...
That is the end of part 2. You now have half a minute to check your answers to part 2. Part 3. You will hear a discussion between a professor and two students about planning their course choices for next semester. First, you have some time to look at questions 21 to 24. Now listen and answer questions 21 to 24.
Right. Olivia and Daniel, let's look at your course plans for next semester. Olivia, you've chosen 5 modules, but the issue is not the number, it's the mix. They're all lecture-based courses, which means you'll be writing essays for every assessment.
So the problem isn't workload itself, but lack of variety?
Exactly. Employers and examiners value balance. A presentation-based module would showcase other skills.
I see. I was unsure whether to take environmental policy or comparative politics. They clash in timetable slots.
If you're aiming at international work, comparative politics gives broader insight. Environmental policy is excellent too, but more specialized.
I've also noticed Daniel chose 2 modules assessed only by group projects. Isn't that risky?
Group work can be tricky, yes, but it reflects workplace collaboration. Still, if more than half your modules are group assessed, you may struggle to show individual strengths.
I hadn't thought of that. I'll reconsider.
What about optional language classes? I was thinking of French, but maybe Spanish is more useful?
Both are valuable, but consider future opportunities. French is still the main working language in many international organizations. Spanish, though, would connect you to a wider population globally. Either way, be clear why you choose it.
Before you hear the rest of the conversation, you have some time to look at questions 25 to 30. Now listen and answer questions 25 to 30.
And about the research methods course, it looks really technical with statistics and coding. Do we have to take it?
It's compulsory, and more than that, it's vital. Students often underestimate it, but those skills will make your final year project much stronger.
Speaking of projects, should we already be thinking about dissertation topics?
Definitely. You don't need a fixed title yet, but starting to read around possible themes will save time later. Early exploration prevents last-minute panic.
How about study abroad opportunities? I heard applications open soon.
Yes, the deadline is earlier than most realize, end of October. Many miss out because they assume it's in spring.
Good to know. And internships, are they arranged by the university?
Some are, but not all. The Careers Office keeps a database, but many placements require you to apply independently, so don't rely solely on university listings.
One more thing. I'm unsure whether to register for the evening seminar on leadership. It sounds useful, but it runs late.
It's optional, yet highly recommended. Students who attend often say it boosts their confidence in presentations. The late timing is inconvenient, but the benefit outweighs it.
Thanks, Professor. With all these adjustments, do you think our plans are solid?
Yes. If you act on this advice, your study program will be more competitive for future careers.
That is the end of Part 3. You now have half a minute to check your answers to Part 3. Part 4. You will hear a university lecture about the history and development of sculpture. First, you have some time to look at questions 31 to 40. Now listen and answer questions 31 to 40.
Good afternoon, everyone. Today we'll be looking at the fascinating subject of sculpture, not just as an art form, but also as a cultural marker that tells us about the societies in which it was produced. Let's begin with the basics. Sculpture is one of the oldest creative expressions. Early examples weren't grand statues, but small carvings made from bone or stone. These were often symbolic figures, like fertility idols, rather than attempts at realistic human form. Over time, sculptors developed the ability to portray the body more naturally, with attention to muscles, posture, and even movement. Now, when people think of famous sculpture, they often jump straight to ancient Greece. And it's true. The Greeks set new standards in realism. But we shouldn't forget Egypt. Egyptian statues were more rigid and formal, often linked to religion. By contrast, Greek sculptures celebrated athleticism and beauty, striving for ideal human proportions. The Romans, who came later, admired Greek art so much that they copied it extensively. Many Greek originals are actually lost, and we only know them through Roman copies. Interestingly, Roman artists added their own twist. They were less concerned with perfection and more focused on lifelike portraits of individuals, complete with wrinkles. During the Middle Ages, sculpture shifted direction again. The human figure was still carved, but mainly in churches, on doors, pulpits, and tombs. The emphasis wasn't beauty, but instruction. Sculptures were used to educate Bible stories to a largely illiterate population. The Renaissance changed everything. Artists like Michelangelo treated sculpture not just as decoration, but as a way of exploring the human condition. His David, for instance, symbolizes both physical power and determination. Renaissance sculpture revived classical ideals, but pushed them further, blending realism with deeper psychological meaning. Fast forwarding to the modern era, sculpture became experimental. Instead of just carving stone or casting bronze, artists began to use unconventional materials, wood scraps, plastic, even everyday objects. The focus often shifted from the finished product to the ideas behind it. In fact, some 20th century sculptures puzzled audiences, who wondered whether a pile of metal bars could truly count as art. It's worth noting how the placement of sculpture also changed. Traditionally, statues were placed in temples, palaces, or public squares. Today, they may appear in shopping centers, airports, or even on street corners. This shows how sculpture has become more accessible, blending into daily life rather than being reserved for elite spaces. Another interesting development is interactive sculpture. Some contemporary works are designed for people to touch, walk through, or even climb. This challenges the old idea that art is untouchable and distant from the viewer. Looking ahead, technology is playing an increasing role. 3D printing, for example, allows artists to produce forms that would be almost impossible by hand. Some predict that in the near future, digital and physical sculpture will merge, with virtual installations that exist partly in real space and partly in augmented reality. Finally, let me leave you with this thought. Sculpture has always reflected society's values. From fertility idols to 3D printed installations, it shows us what people cared about, whether stability, beauty, faith, or innovation. So the next time you see a sculpture, ancient or modern, ask yourself not just what it represents, but why it was made in that way.
That is the end of Part 4.